Howdy, and welcome back to Celebrating Vintage Model Kits. Today we've got another Hawk kit, this time a Republic Thunderstreak F-84F. This is a 1958 issue of this kit, originally produced in 1955 by Hawk. It's kit number 606-60. It scales out to 1/75th scale, so just slightly off from 1/72nd. And we've got box art by Bill Campbell, who did a lot of Hawk's late 50s into the 60s artwork for their boxings. So before we get into the kit, just want to send out a reminder, if you've built any of the kits that have been featured in our videos, or any other vintage kits from the era that we're featuring, definitely send in some photographs of it, or if you got a video clip. We're putting together viewer build videos. We've got our next one just about ready to go. We need a couple more submissions to kind of fill it out, make it long enough to post. So if you got something, absolutely send it in. So this particular kit here was the third issuing of this Thunderstreak from Hawk, and we'll take a look at it here. So we've got, as mentioned before, the really nice artwork on the cover. And what I find kind of neat is this close-up of the nose of one, showing, Mr. Happy Pilot here, kind of resembling like Steve Canyon, or, a recruiting poster. It's got Lieutenant R, and then it's got the name kind of not quite legible as to who exactly it's supposed to be, but he certainly is happy flying off in his Thunderstreak here while his buddy's shooting off rockets. You got on the end the Hawk logo. You've got Hawk's address down here, and 43 unassembled plastic parts. On the side, we've got some images of some of their additional aircraft that were available, and you can see the artwork wraps around the box, and here you've actually got Bill Campbell's signature on here. Found it interesting that they got the Texan and the SNJ listed here, which is the same kit, just different decals. On the opposite side, a couple more of their Corsairs, Spirit of St. Louis, Hawk logo. On the end, your model number. For those of you who are unaware, the -60 in the model number is supposed to be the suggested retail price. This would have been 60 cents. When this boxing was initially issued, it had a -50, and then at some point it got changed to -60. For a 10-cent price increase. And then same thing on this side. And we got the bottom of the box. So this is the, for Hawk, this is the end of the litho printed and wrapped around a hard box. This is now one of their thinner cardboard where the printing is directly onto the cardboard. And it's a folded box, so much quicker for assembly. Same thing with the bottom. This is one of those folded together pieces as opposed to glued with tabs. Then we've got our instruction sheet and details. So look at this part here. So we've got step-by-step instructions showing basically just two exploded views. Here's putting together the main parts, and then assembling all the additional pieces like the rockets and wheels if you wanted. It does come with a stand. Then in the bottom corner, you've got some information about the aircraft itself. And here, you've actually got an image of what is actually the kit depicted. This is the prototype for the Thunderstreak. Flip side, which was, I think, pretty neat from Hawk at this point, they were still including these excellent 3D drawings. And so these would be great for sticking on your wall. The person that did this was John Zwiski, and this is from the original 1956, or actually the second issue of the kit in 1956. But really nice drawings. This is printed on a semi-slick, glossy kind of paper, so makes for a nice presentation. And of course the big Hawk logo up there, really neat looking. So here's the decals that came with it. Surprisingly still in pretty good shape, a little bit of yellowing. But you do get a full set of decals with this. You got the Hawk logo as well. And you got the anti-glare panel for the nose and across the spine. And your kit numbers, so these are produced specifically for this issue of the kit. So this aircraft here that's being depicted, FS-430 or 92430, was from a 1949 contract. And the 2430 was originally ordered as part of the F-84E order, which was the straight-wing Thunderjet. It was pulled from that group to act as the prototype for a swept-wing version of it, which initially was called a YF-96A. And when it was actually rolled out from the factory, it actually carried that the YF-96A printed or painted on the nose. And but that was changed, from what I've read, it was changed to F-84F, even though there was hardly anything now associated between the two, the straight wing and the swept wing. It was being changed as part of a way of kind of sneaking it in under contract of the other aircraft. The money was getting a little bit tight. This is in the 50s when 1949, 1950, just prior to the Korean War, there was a drawdown of forces and stuff. Everyone was thinking, strategic bombers, nuclear weapons were going to make these types of aircraft obsolete. So they weren't really interested in buying a whole lot of them. And so they certainly weren't interested in buying a brand new model that didn't really seem to do all that much different than some of the stuff that was currently on the drawing boards ready to go, such as the F-100 Super Sabre. So cleverly, Republic relabeled this as the F-84F, so it's just a variant of the aircraft that they were already on contract for. So aside from sweeping the wing, they swept the tail as well, and they went to a 5,200-pound thrust XJ35 jet engine. This exact aircraft first flew on 3rd of June 1950. Was first flown by test pilot Bud Haas. It was then transferred to NACA for their high-speed flight to test aileron effectiveness at high speed before spoilers were incorporated instead of ailerons. In 52, was transferred back to Wright-Patterson, and in 1953, it was converted to a YRF-84, and that was part of the FICON project. Bombers, like the B-36, were intercontinental, but the fighters, of course, could not escort these big, giant bombers all the way halfway around the world. So someone came up with the brilliant idea of, hey, let's just hook a fighter onto a bomber and it will carry it over there. It's also an idea to use it for recon, so you could get a fast recon ship close to a territory on this big bomber. And in some cases, if it was a strategic or a tactical target that could be dealt with by an F-84, and eventually F-84s could actually carry nukes. The bomber, which was more vulnerable, could carry the fighter in and jettison the fighter, go off, with their nuclear weapon or their conventional bombs, do their bombing, come back, and hook up back onto the B-36. So this was tested out, and they used this prototype as the first conversion for it. Put a retractable hook in the nose weapons bay, put anhedral on the tail, and also some hard points for attaching to the B-36 itself. First flight in that conversion was on 30th of March, 1953. Then they ended up sending it to Edwards, and it conducted these tests all the way through to June 1954. What killed this project, even though they were successful at being able to join the aircraft, release the aircraft, what killed it was in-flight refueling. The viability of in-flight refueling was proving much, much better, and so that ended the FICON concept. The aircraft was then transferred back to Edwards Air Force, to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, and it was used for emergency landing barrier testing. They would high-speed taxied across the runway into these new barriers that they were creating for the runways for emergency landings. And eventually, later in the year, it was sent over to Williams Air Force Base in Arizona as a training aid. And finally, it got shipped back to Wright-Patterson to become part of the Air Force Museum in 1967. When it was part of the FICON thing, they did swap the canopy out to what is the F-84G canopy, which had the reinforcement framing on it, probably because they were concerned if the aircraft bumped against the bottom of B-36, it would shatter the standard canopy. So they put the reinforced canopy on it, and that's the way it is in existent today, is with that reinforced canopy. So it's a little bit of history about that. I'm going to show you some images of both the prototype and then as it was going through the FICON series and its current state at Wright-Patterson. So now we'll take a look at the kit. Start with fuselages, split down the middle. It actually got a pretty tight fit. It's early in its production, so the molds aren't wore out yet. So you actually can get a fairly tight fit with this aircraft with minimal amount of filling needed on it. But as you can see, it's got all recessed panel lines. Minimal amount of detail, but it is all recessed, fairly heavy or deep. And unfortunately, it also does have the molded in markings. So you got the tail number and the star and bar. Not much for a cockpit, just literally a hole. Got representation of where the landing gear doors would be. Some stuff underneath fuselage, slot for your stand. And just a hole for the nose, and a hole for your tail. And that's it. You do get Hawk's name printed on here a few times, as we've talked about in the past. Early kits were being ripped off back and forth between manufacturers, so Hawk decided to start putting their name on stuff, so that way it made it a little bit harder to steal their product. You got a whole slew of rockets. Get yourself a dozen of them there, the base of the stand. Another dozen rockets. And the pilot figure, this is a generic pilot figure that Hawk used for most of their 72nd scale-ish aircraft. Just generic blobby spaceman kind of looking guy. Here we've got a wing. Again, recessed panel lines. And also the engraved star and bar. You got stubs for your rockets and representation of the gear doors. You do have the hole for where you could put the gear if you want the gear down. And here's your other tree with the other wing. Do get an injector pin marks on the bottom. At least they didn't put them on the top like some makers seem to do. And very generic representation of landing gear. Like the gear door and the struts for the main wheels are all molded together, and just very generic round objects for wheels and some gear doors. Your tailplane is one piece, so you don't have to worry about one side being off from the other. But that's it. Here's your stand, and here's your canopy. And it has, the framing is molded on the outside. Not too bad. Long piece. Now, some of you may have noticed a difference in the way that the kit looks versus the way the box art looks. So this F-84F prototype, where the Y aircraft first one produced, was a conversion of an F-84E. So it retained a lot of the look of that, but when the actual aircraft went into production, they made a lot more changes. Notably, what you do see on the box cover, they went to this big hump spine, a very different type of canopy. some more changes. And of course, there's an engine change within change, some of the shape of the fuselage. And so the artwork looks a lot more like the actual regular production F-84, but as you see, the model is of that prototype, which is kind of strange in that this was issued in 1955. So this is, a good, 5 years after, the prototype had been out. So by then, regular production F-84s were, out in squadron service. So the fact that Hawk chose to use the prototype as their model for the kit when the rest of the line was very different. It's kind of an unusual choice, but yet they kind of hide that fact by their choice in the way they do their artwork. So this kit, as I mentioned, was first issued in 55. Later in 55, they did reissue it with a litho box. The first issue was in their kind of two-color printed box, the monochrome looking box that they had on their very first issue kits. And then they went to the lithograph, with artwork a little bit later in the year. Then you got this issue, and then it was again reissued as a double box kit with what they call the Supermarine K4, which was actually their Supermarine Swift model that was double boxed in 1960. There was a boxing with this same kind of artwork, but with Tester's logo on it when Tester's took over Hawk. So it was basically the same look of this kit. And then it disappeared for quite a while, but Tester's reissued it a couple of times in 94 and 95. And that's it. There haven't been any other issues or any other companies issuing this kit that I was able to find. But, for quick put together, I think it would probably look best just being on the stand without the wheels, and probably without all those extra little rockets on there. Just kind of look as almost like a manufacturer's display desk model kind of look. I think it'd be a good looking kit for that. So that's about it for today. Again, reminder, if you've built this kit, had any experience with it, let us know in the comment section. And of course, send in photographs. If you've built this, you got it still sitting around in your collection. And send that in for our next viewer video. Well, that's about it for today. Thanks for watching, and have yourselves a great and fantastic day.